It's nice to have the option to sit comfortably in a chair when you're out camping and hiking, but as modern humans, we do enough sitting as it is. Maybe you've heard researchers and evolutionary biologists say things like sitting is the new smoking, or the inability to sit in a deep squat is slowly killing you. And that might sound alarmist, but when you look at the research and how important this is to us as humans, it is actually pretty alarming. But what I found really frustrating when I was learning all of this stuff is that I had the inability to sit down deeply into a squat with my heels on the ground without falling over behind me. Not very encouraging for someone who's trying to learn and improve themselves. So in this video, I want to give you a step-by-step process to help you regain the ability to squat deeply and at the same time reduce your risk from dying from just about every non-communicable disease that exists. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be willing to set aside your camp chair or at least just appreciate it as a luxury. Let's get into it. So the squat is a movement that is fundamental to the physiology of human beings. It was once the default position for resting, eating, socializing, defecating, and in many parts of the world it still is. Maybe you've noticed this if you've traveled to Asia and you've seen people squatting, waiting for the bus.
Plus Asian points if you put your hands together.
But as Westerners, we aren't just born with tight hips. Yes, there are some certain hip girdles that are a little bit tighter than others where you get bone-on-bone contact, but for the most part, that's not going to stop anyone from squatting. And if you look at kids in kindergarten, for example, up to the age of about 5 or 6, before we start putting them in chairs, they're perfectly capable of doing a very natural squat all the way to the ground and come back up out of that with no problem. It's only when we start putting kids in chairs for 8 hours a day that we start to see the ability to squat slowly decline over time. And for me, this is the clearest example of the phrase use it or lose it, because our squat patterns or lack of squat patterns continues to get worse as we spend more time sitting in chairs, sitting at the dinner table, sitting in a car, sitting on the way to work and sitting at work. It just continues to get worse and worse. So why is this even important? Why does it matter? It matters because the squat is the one fundamental movement that we have as humans. The inability to squat isn't just the inability to perform one movement out of a world of a million exercises. It permeates into almost every other functional movement the body can do. And that means with a limited squat, we experience a broader sense of limitation in general as a result. And you might be asking yourself, do limitations in my squat carry over to limitations in hiking? And I think categorically the answer is yes. I mean, that's what I would argue in a longer form conversation, but we have a short amount of time here. So that would be my answer. The thing is, as a young person around my age or younger, you might not notice for now, but as you continue to get older without having the squat in your movement diet, then there is a good chance that not being able to squat is going to come back to haunt you at some stage. And I don't want to say this to be fear-mongering you, so you have to throw away every chair in your house and sit on the floor for the rest of your life. It's more about just thinking about how can we integrate the squat in our daily lifestyle so that we can build on that and regain some more quality of movement and hopefully retain that if we continue to do that as we get older. And if you watch the channel regularly, you know how I feel about this. I'm all about the long term. And let's say if we look at a 70-year-old hiker who can squat, for example, I'm willing to bet that that 70-year-old hiker will have at least another good 5 or 10 years of hiking left in them. On the other hand, if we were to have a look at a 70-year-old hiker who couldn't squat, I'd be willing to bet that their days of comfortable hiking on steep terrain would be limited. So we'll do a full circle here and we'll bring it back to camping chairs. What has all this got to do with sitting in a camping chair? And I think it comes down to this. If you have a pretty decent squat, like if you can comfortably come below parallel and almost to the ground and you're working to maintain that, and you're sitting in a camp chair, not as a necessity, but as a luxury, as a way to relax, then I think camping chairs are absolutely fine. But if you're sitting in a camp chair because it's your only option to sit comfortably, then that's only going to serve to accelerate the decline of your freedom of movement and independence. And for me, I see the result of this show up every day in the comments section with questions about hip pain, knee pain, especially ankle problems. And I think a lot of this could be solved if we're just trying to regain a little bit more of that squat mobility. So to address that, I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan here and some movements that you can integrate into your lifestyle so that we can start regaining that squat. Let's get into it. So step one is to get comfortable. The first step to regaining the squat is to find a position in the squat where you're completely comfortable. The simplest way to do this is to elevate your heels. That's going to take the ankle mobility out of the equation. I like to use my camping mat folded up as many times as necessary to make it comfortable to sit, cook, clean, and eat. That's why I really like these foldable foam mats, because they're really just like a step-by-step progress of improvement that you can see, with the highest level being someone that's very limited in their squat, and then a single piece of foam representing someone that's a lot closer to getting into their deep squat. When I'm at home, I like to use these wedges from BodyMate. They're really adaptable, very portable. So if I'm going for a workout outside, they're really easy to throw in my bag and I can bring them along. I got these really cheap on Amazon. They're very basic, but they absolutely do the job. Cheaper and more portable than a slant board, and is really good value for money in terms of your health. But you don't need anything special. Honestly, you can use just about anything in your house that's going to give your heels a little bit of a boost. And that is going to make the squat far more comfortable. And more importantly, it makes you capable of doing the squat. And I think capability is such an important feeling. There's nothing worse than starting an exercise routine and the first exercise you're not capable of doing. There's nothing more detrimental to momentum and consistency than that happening. So we want to focus on you finding a variation of the squat that you're capable and comfortable in. So my foldable sleeping mat example there is absolutely perfect. Over time, as your body readjusts, you can lower the height as your comfort zone widens. As far as how often to do this, it can and should be done daily. That's why I included it in my daily movement routine for hikers. It's the last exercise right at the end, and we spend a good couple of minutes sitting in the squat there. And if you're into movement and self-improvement and exercise, you probably already have a gigantic list of daily exercises to do, but trust me, just put squat at the top of those lists. This is a master exercise, and like I said earlier, it permeates into all the other movements, especially the lower body movements, but even many of the upper body movements as well. So that's step one, get comfortable. Step two is to get moving. This second step is about starting to move in and out of that bottom position. Not on a partial range of motion, not squatting down to just parallel, but moving in a full and complete range of motion where your butt touches your heels. We want to get all the way down to that bottom resting position of the squat, as they say, ass to grass, and then moving back up all the way until a standing position. And once again, just to reiterate this, elevating the heels as much as you need to work in a full range of motion. This is not only a fantastic way to groove that movement pattern and increase the health of your knees and ankles and hips, but it's also a simple and really obvious way for you to build endurance for your hikes and at the same time improving your general movement quality. How many reps should you do? Well, start with a number that you're relatively comfortable with. I would recommend maybe 10 or 15 reps doing 2 or 3 sets. Do that for a day and see how you feel. If you recover well over the next couple of days and you're feeling pretty good, do it again. And slowly over time, get more comfortable coming in and out of the squat at least 10 reps per day. You could do a couple of reps in the morning as you're getting out of bed, a couple of the reps before lunch, a couple of the reps in the afternoon, a couple before you go to sleep, and then you've got your 10 reps for the day. This is called greasing the groove, and it's one of the most fundamental and really basic ways to start attacking a movement that you want to do. It might seem like a really small and insignificant amount of volume, but that's what greasing the groove is all about, doing it regularly and hitting it every single day and being really consistent with it. Now, of course, over time, you're gonna have to add more volume if you wanna get stronger, which I'm assuming most of you do. And that's where step 3 comes in, which is get uncomfortable. So at a certain point, you're gonna need more stimulus and more variety to continue making improvements in your squat. The options are really endless here and can be adapted wherever you feel most limited, whether it's in hip range of motion, ankle tightness, or in strength, or even the thoracic spine, which actually plays a surprisingly large role in developing a nice looking squat. But if your goal isn't really to build huge amounts of strength, then you can apply something a little bit more simple, which is just spending more time sitting in the resting deep squat position. And you can do that at work. I like to actually sit here with my BodyMate wedges. I moved my workstation to the living room here and I sit here. And the great thing about this is that I'm moving in and out of different positions. I might only sit in the squat for 5 or 10 minutes, but then I'm sitting in all sorts of different ways and I'm continuing to move my hips in internal and external rotation. And that's only serving to improve my squat. It's adding to the process, not taking it away, which is what happens when you sit in a chair. So I think a good protocol to start with in terms of how much time you spend sitting in this deep squat position would be 10 minutes. I started off with 10 minutes and I built up to eventually 30 minutes following the Ido Portal squat routine and the squat challenge, which involved doing 30 minutes a day for 30 days. And I saw some really significant improvements in how comfortable I was at the bottom of my squat from doing that. I'm not saying you have to do it. I wouldn't even necessarily recommend it, but for those of you who are a little more on the extreme end and you're just dying to get a better squat, that's probably the way to do it. So that's my 3-step plan. Get comfortable, get moving, and then get uncomfortable. So taking on that 3-step plan and just integrating the squat as a movement in itself is going to get you really good results. But for those of you who want to dive deeper onto this, if you want more structure, if you want follow alongs, then I actually just created a follow along that's in my new Momentum membership, which is 25 minutes of breaking down all of the components that are needed in a squat. And that way you just hit play, follow along to my guidance, and you will get better into the squat that way as well. But plugs for my programs aside, I want to encourage you not to look at the squat as an exercise, but as a key measurement of overall health and as a way of putting some comfortable distance between what your body needs to be able to do on a day-to-day basis just to survive and the absolute limit of your physical ability. If you can widen that gap, then the likelihood is you'll maintain a much higher quality of life for a lot longer, meaning you can continue to hike and climb steep mountains well into your old age. And that's pretty much the aim of this channel, to keep as many of you as possible in good working order for as long as possible. So my advice is to integrate the squat as a daily habit. If you want to learn more about this, make sure you subscribe. Check out this video here about deepening your squat that I made a couple of years ago. If you got something out of this video, hit the like button. You can share it with a friend, or you could just sit at home in a squat thinking about how great this video works. That really helps as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the summit.